We're going to now turn to Doua Thor from the Southeast Asia Resource Action Center. I do want to quickly call your attention to a misprint on our agenda. You may be getting your hearts and minds ready for a riveting talk from Doua on the economic benefits of providing English language learners a quality education. That's not what she's going to talk about. I know you're a little disappointed. Actually, she's going to talk a little bit to us about some of the specific dangers of not adequately and properly counting in a manner that does not render special student populations, namely Southeast Asian student populations, invisible in the educational process. Doua.
Good morning. So, I do believe there are economic benefits, considering that English is my second language and I was an ESL student myself. So, good morning, everyone. I'm the executive director, as what Michael mentioned, of an organization called the Southeast Asia Resource Action Center. And we're based here in Washington, D.C., and also a partner of the Coalition for High School Equity. I'm going to talk a little bit today about the importance of not just having data, but disaggregated data. And in particular, Mrs. Smith actually talked a lot about Arkansas, and my parents actually live in Decatur, Arkansas, a rural area where there's a huge influx of Southeast Asian refugees to that particular area, and has made, I think, a big difference in terms of what the school population looks like and actually what race looks like in that particular school district, because there are high refugee populations as well as Latino populations there, and in particular our population seems to be more similar to many low-income Latino populations and African-American populations in terms of how they are doing in the system and how the system is actually helping them, or in some cases actually overlooking their opportunities. The Asian Pacific Islander American community is a tremendously diverse community, and in particular, you're talking about 50 different ethnicities, over 100 different languages, different cultural practices, as well as socioeconomic statuses and historical circumstances. So in this particular category, you're including everything from Chinese Americans who've been in this country for multiple generations, all the way to relatively new Southeast Asian refugees who came to the U.S. with no formal education or very little access to higher education in their own countries. As a result, actually, many Southeast Asian American students face tremendous poverty, language, and cultural barriers, and when educational data is not disaggregated, and in many cases not collected, the diverse needs of students under one aggregate Asian American category is often overshadowed by more established communities. You'll notice that in your packets there are some there's I think a card with some dropout rates and also educational achievement data. And you'll notice if you just look at Asian Americans overall, actually we're doing even better than white Americans. And when you look at the disaggregated data, actually you'll see a very different picture that often policymakers and the public know very little about. And they often notice, the Chinese boy who went to Harvard. Of course, I don't know anybody who went to Harvard. So the particular interesting aspect for our communities is that becomes the traditional face. And when civil rights is talked about in terms of educational access, our communities then are often overlooked because actually many people believe we have over-accessed the system, when in actuality that's not true. Plagued by the model minority myth, right, the stereotype that all Asian Pacific Islander Americans are achieving above and beyond, the profile of Southeast Asian students looks very different. For example, according to the 2000 census, Hmong Americans, and I myself am Hmong and came to the U.S. as a refugee, had the lowest per capita income of any ethnic or racial group in this country at $6,613 per person as compared to $21,587 for the overall U.S. American population. In addition, the average size for a Hmong family is 6 compared to 3 in the overall U.S. population. And while 84% of the U.S. population 25 years and over have a high school graduate degree or higher, only 65% of Cambodians, 62% of Laotians, and 72% of Vietnamese Americans have a high school graduate degree or higher. Additionally, compared to just 9% of the total U.S. population, 42% of Cambodians, 43% of Hmong, and 44% of Laotians speak English less than well. signifying that most Southeast Asian American students are identified as English language learners. And in fact, following Spanish, Vietnamese and Hmong are the second and third most spoken languages by English language learners in the country. It is unfortunate that I'm able to really speak about the academic performances of Southeast Asian American students across the country as a whole. States are required by No Child Left Behind to disaggregate achievement and graduation data by race, not by ethnicity, causing misperceptions about the performances of Southeast Asian American students and English language learners. Although there are some reports on performances of Southeast Asian students at the local level, data collection is often inconsistent, making it difficult to report reliably on a national level on really how these students are doing. In addition to skewing perceptions about Southeast Asian American students, the lack of data fails to authenticate the experiences and concerns of many of these students, parents, and communities. It is already difficult for low-income, overworked, and non-native English-speaking communities to mobilize and advocate for educational rights. Without this data, actually, it makes it even more difficult for them to have a legitimate space to talk about these particular issues. Southeast Asian communities continue to struggle, including in national discussions in such issues such as dropout rates and English language learners, in college enrollment and college retention rates. And in fact, in 1999, the College Board released a report called Reaching the Top that neglected to examine any data, disaggregated data for Asian Pacific American Islander students, and in fact said that many APA students were achieving above and beyond the average student. When an influential body such as this comes out with a report like this, I think in many ways it just enhances the stereotypes that go along with the Asian Pacific American population. And after a community outcry that involved Congressman Underwood at the time from Guam, the College Board is actually now in the process of producing a new report focused just on Asian Pacific American students and really how they're doing in college campuses across the country, which specifically highlights such things as high suicide rates that people actually don't know about. The U.S. Census data actually collects and reports this aggregate data, and we hope that school districts across the country and departments of education will follow. The census understands that the importance of having accurate data, which is necessary to address the needs of many different Asian Pacific ethnic groups, is important. And academic and graduation data collection and reporting should aim to align with the census so that it can accurately reflect the diversity of the Asian Pacific American population. Southeast Asian Americans are concentrated and growing in several particular states, including Arkansas, California, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Texas, Virginia, and Washington. At the very least, states or even school districts with concentrations of Southeast Asian American students should be required to disaggregate their data in order to make better informed decisions on in their local areas. Others are concerned that there will be additional weight on states and schools to further disaggregate data by ethnicities and social classes. However, if sufficient funding and guidance is provided to states and schools, then it will make the process of data disaggregation and reporting less burdensome. Our strong recommendation is actually to provide full funding to build the capacity of school districts to collect additional student-level information. If states to systematically report disaggregated data for students' ethnic and social class subgroups that meet a critical mass threshold. It will be a lengthy process to evolve data collection and reporting systems to reflect the increasing diversity of our student populations, but it is critical that we are proactive and inclusive. And in conclusion, I urge all of you to encourage the need for better data and research and to pay particular attention to data that is disaggregated when developing policies and procedures. I stand with my colleagues on the panel with the realization that this is a long-term plan and that we don't expect data to be all disaggregated tomorrow, but that actually we will work towards that and realize that that's necessary in order for all students to really be impacted and to really be collected in terms of their information for further information on how they're going to do and they're going to proceed in this country and the education system. And I look forward to questions later on. Thank you.